we forgot to put hashtag LPTV. Hello, everyone,
Hey,
and
it's not
welcome
just
to,
me.
welcome to the LPTV Disney Morning News Update for
On
January
Victory
17th.
Tuesday.
Victory Tuesday. Go Cowboys. Whew. Yes, go Cowboys. Now, normally we would take this opportunity for me to extol the virtues of Dak Prescott and company and spend the first 20 minutes on that. But unfortunately, we have actual Disney news to talk about today, and quite a bit of it. So we're going to get to that very shortly. But as always, we are going to start this show with Kyle's magnificent financial prognostications. New word. S&P today, after the 3-day weekend, essentially even. When it's less than 1.1%, we call it even. How's Disney doing, Kyle?
Well, it's hard because we'll get to lots of business news about them, and I don't know how that affects it either way. So I will say that they are also down or flattish.
Or flat. I thought you were going to say down and get some amount.
No.
Here we go. They are flattish too. Actually, I would call that up. It's more than 0.1%.
That's up.
So when I checked earlier this morning, they were actually at over 100. So.
Oh yeah, I see that nice little mountain. I wonder what that was for.
And now a little bit, man. See, if you would have sold here and then bought again here.
Yes, right, if you had called Miss Cleo and she looked into her crystal ball.
Have you watched that documentary on Miss Cleo? That's on, I think it's on Netflix right now.
Yes.
Paramount or something. You did?
Yeah.
Okay, Kyle. This is Kyle Burbank. He's the managing editor of Laughing Place. I'm Doobie Mosley. I'm the co-founder of Laughing Place. And we are going to do the day's weather. And then I promise we're getting to the good stuff.
All right. So no severe weather today. You can see there's a chance of general thunderstorms just south of me. If you put the cities on, like Springfield's right on that cusp there. But we're going to talk about the Disney parks around the world. In Anaheim, mostly sunny. It's in the 40s right now, but it'll warm to just past 60 degrees around noon before retreating after sunset. In Orlando, it's a sunny day with highs in the lower 70s and some light winds. At Castaway Cay, or at least in Nassau, they're in the lower 70s with a 0% chance of precipitation. In Mont-la-Vallée, Paris, they are closing out the evening with some light rain that could actually turn to snow showers, although it is above freezing with temperatures in the upper 30s, so it probably won't stick. If it is, it'll just be slushy snow. In Tokyo tomorrow, they'll have a partly cloudy day that will turn partly sunny with highs in the lower 50s. Shanghai is in the sub 40s right now, or will be when they start their day. It won't get too far past 50 degrees, but there will be plenty of sunshine and light breezes. And then finally in Hong Kong, they'll start their day in the 50s, but will break into the 60s after lunch for a sunny afternoon. So your doobie pick is once again Castaway Cay.
Yeah, that's pretty sad. That's pretty safe pick day in and day out, but especially with no chance of rain, because rain does kind of get in the way there. All right, folks, so the biggest reason we are here this morning is twofold. One, Disney has responded. They have said Nelson Peltz does not belong on the board, and here's why. And they gave a nice marketing document giving their points. So, and then number two, our man, Benji Breitbart, the CEO, the big cheese of of Laughing Place, had the opportunity to talk to one of the big cheeses at Disney this morning, Josh D'Amaro, the chairman of Disney Parks Experiences and Products. And he is going to talk about that interaction. And there's also a third thing, the release of Disney's proxy, which we'll talk about a little bit later in this show. So let's bring on the big cheese himself. How you doing, Big Cheese?
Good. It's been a busy morning.
He is coming to us live from Lake Buena Vista, I'm guessing. Where are you specifically?
So. I don't know where Bay Lake begins and Lake Buena Vista ends, but I'm at the Swan, if that helps.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Are you at the reserve or just
no OG Swan?
OG Swan with the helicopter. You just celebrated an anniversary last week. All right, so let's start with you want to start with Disney Responds, right?
Sure.
Let's do it.
We have this deck here from Disney. If you want more detail, it's in the proxy statement, but this is their highlights here. under a presentation, the current Disney board is the right board for shareholders. So we went through point by point last week about Nelson Peltz's case. So it's only fair we do that for Disney's perspective on it as well.
It's not only fair; I think it's the law, right? We have to give equal time.
I don't think equal time is still a thing. So obviously, I mean, once you get past the disclaimers in this thing, which is, on both of them is a little crazy. They're talking about how the board is independent, which they are. Obviously, they got rid of their CEO, and how they're trying to thread the needle here regarding, coming back from COVID while launching, Disney Plus and direct to consumer more broadly. And as they say, it demonstrated focuses on succession with a creation of a special succession planning committee. I mean, I think anyone would say Disney's succession planning has sucked, but I mean, that's I think one battle where Nelson you could go like, okay. They're talking about Nike's chairman, Mark Parker, who's well liked and actually handled this transition where he became executive chairman and a new man was named CEO. They talked about Carolyn Everson, who was added at the request of Dan Loeb's activism. And you're going to see a lot in here about the sort of contrasting, maybe not so much in here, but in the proxy, contrasting Dan Loeb to Nelson Peltz and why Dan Loeb is happy and Nelson Peltz is not. Then they're talking about how all the things they're doing right now, right? Which are basically, as we mentioned in the last time, they're doing the things Nelson asked for, right? They are reorganizing the structure, they are reducing costs, and they are trying to become profitable on streaming, and they're improving the guest experience at the parks. So those are his big points, and they're already doing it. And then, so you end up with Disney's thesis, which is Nelson Peltz does not understand Disney's businesses and lacks the skills and experience to assist the board in delivering shareholder value in a rapidly shifting media ecosystem. So you remember last time we saw Nelson was talking about how Disney's total shareholder return was low under Bob Iger's tenure. Well, Disney's saying, well, hang on. You're saying at the end, you're comparing the start of Bob Iger's tenure to today. And Bob Iger, there's Bob Chapek in the middle there. And is it fair to say Bob Iger's tenure extended all the way through Bob Chapek? So if you take the numbers based off of when Bob Iger started to when Bob Iger left, originally in February of 2020, you'll see that Disney has well outperformed the S&P. Now, that has since changed under Bob Chapek's leadership, and they would say that's why we got rid of Bob Chapek. And if you compare it, to their peers, whether it's Comcast, Warner Bros. Discovery, the remnant of Fox, Paramount, you'll see that they have outperformed all of them. And they're going to go back to some more metrics that really just move the date back to when Bob Iger left, not today. The slide when they talk about the acquisitions, this is to me, we've always made this case, and it's funny, is they basically go to every time we've done an acquisition, they have all said that Disney overpaid, and they all were wrong. So it's too soon to say Disney overpaid for 21st Century Fox. They go through the reasons they acquired 21st Century Fox, IP, the key talent they brought in. I think it's kind of funny here. They talk about unifying key Disney IP by bringing folks like Deadpool, Fantastic Four, and Episode 4 of Star Wars into all under one umbrella. We also have The Simpsons, Family Guy, Modern Family, Avatar, the X-Men once again. So they're basically saying, are you sure we overpaid? You don't know. And they bring up the point that Nelson kept talking about overpaying for Sky. Disney didn't buy Sky. They sold. Yeah. And so they didn't overpay it because they didn't buy it. And they go, well, and then Nelson Peltz will go like, well, they tried to, but they didn't. I mean, in the end, what you go by what you do, not what you think you may do or what you considered. And then, who the question is, so if Rupert Murdoch's selling 21st Century Fox, someone's going to buy it. Why, I mean, Comcast put in an alternate bid. Why, would you prefer that someone else owned it? Complicating this whole IP situation. And they go through sort of, I would say, more wonky things regarding like leverage. And I mean, it's interesting if you're a financial person, but, they discuss basically we shut down and during COVID, and that the dividend suspension was driven by COVID, not 21st Century Fox. So they're trying to get back, if Disney had the income streams consistently through, the COVID situation, then they wouldn't, the dividend resumption would have already happened. But even though COVID is in the rearview mirror, they're still sort of getting back into their normal operating thing. And that's why the dividend is suspended. It has nothing to do with 21st Century Fox. Then
not directly with 21st Century Fox.
Well, I mean, they're yeah. I mean,
that's one of the first things that you and I talked about when we went through Nelson's thing. It's
Right.
like, yeah, it's not. They halted it during the pandemic, but you could argue that because the balance sheet was harder hit because of the acquisition before that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's hard to say specifically what would have happened if that acquisition didn't happen. Like, what would the balance sheet look like? I mean, it's hard to imagine they were just going to sit on the cash, right? Would they have, taken that? Would that money be gone anyway? Would it have gone through share repurchase or dividends? What would have happened? It's impossible to say. Then they kind of go for the jugular with Peltz.
This is the fun part, using his own words against him.
Right. So they talk about how Nelson Peltz, who is on the board of Madison Square Garden Media and that whole business, he's been on the board since 2014, and it is not outperformed the S&P. In fact, it has stank compared to S&P. Now he'll say that that's not a Trian investment, that's a personal thing, but he's still the guy on the board. It's not if he's so great, why isn't it fixing the closest thing to a media investment he has? And then here they go. They bring up the quote that he wants to adapt strategies to address changing industry dynamics. And then they bring in, the CNBC interview he did on and bring up his quotes. So, for example, when David Faber asked Nelson Peltz, why Disney? And Peltz responded, why not? And CNBC anchor, I don't know if it was David Faber or not, or if it was Kramer, said, do you buy or sell Hulu? And Peltz says, they have to buy Hulu or they have to get out of the streaming business, which is obviously not true. They have Disney Plus. They could keep Disney Plus. They don't have to own Hulu to stream. And then regarding the park strategy, CNBC asks, what do they mean by over-earning, David Faber? And he says, I think the parks, and I'm not an expert here, probably need a little more CapEx.
But where's the money going to come from, Ben?
Well, we can talk about that too. I had a conversation about that today as well.
CapEx equals capital expenditure or spending money on the parks.
Correct.
Right. And I was quoting later in the interview, he said he'd like to build more parks, but where's the money going to come from? So again, like we were saying, a little bit of speaking out of both sides of his mouth there.
Well, and speaking of speaking on both sides of his mouth, here's what Nelson Peltz claimed, and then we'll do what the board said is the actual fact.
Yeah.
So Nelson Peltz says he's not looking to replace Bob Iger. The actual facts, which came back, this happened when Bob Iger, a quote that came when Bob Iger came back. Trian's view is that Mr. Iger shouldn't be back in control of the company.
Yeah, I get Disney's rebuttal, but also like there is some nuance there. Like he shouldn't have come back. They could say we don't think they should have brought him back. They should have gone with someone else. But now that he's here, we're not looking to replace him at this moment. We're looking to find succession. But point taken.
Nelson Peltz claims Mr. Peltz thinks Mr. Parker and the newly returned Mr. Iger are too friendly.
This is my
As he
favorite
says, Bob Iger and Mark Parker's relationship is purely professional and focused on the Disney board.
That is
I don't even
hilarious.
know what that means. Like
that is hilarious. That is a non-denial.
They offered me a board observer yesterday. Disney says they did not offer. They offered him an information sharing agreement whereby he would meet separately with management and the board once a quarter.
That's semantics, right?
What's that?
Is that semantics?
Well, I think you're not observing the meetings, which is.
When did he say observer? Well, at least when he was talking, when this all came out, I thought it was a consultant.
No, it was a board observer. Was what was in the proxy statement.
We probably threw in generic words like that without realizing the difference. You should know the difference.
Yeah. Okay.
If you look at my record, I've never gotten rid of anybody. So Disney did, and this
is a campaign commercial. At the end of this message has been approved by During the Wall.
It's gonna go to like a black and white photo of Nelson with red text.
That he got rid of GE CEO Jeff Immelt. True. He wanted to meet with the board and to present his strategic and operating initiatives. So basically, Disney says when he did meet with the board, he didn't have any strategy, operating initiatives, or new ideas or plan.
Which I think is fair. Like when we went through, presumably it's a very similar, not the exact same presentation. And we kind of said, yeah, you're kind of stating things we know without offering anything new. If at least that was my takeaway. I don't know what yours was.
Yeah, well, to me it was like, yeah, you're just you're putting in what Disney should do from Bob Iger's like announcement. I mean, it's a lot of the people that are going back is like, okay, Nelson has a success that are supporting Nelson are going, Nelson is successful. So what's the harm, right? He's just one guy on the board. Like maybe he'll have good ideas. If he doesn't, he doesn't. Like big whoop, right? But they were never like, oh, that's a great plan for Nelson. Like Nelson knows how to bring Disney back.
Yeah.
And then they bring back the whole MSG sports thing. And then I'm going to turn to the proxy statement. You can use this slide, but the proxy has a little bit more detail that I think is important about the timeline here. So on July 11th, Nelson met with Bob Chapek at the Art of Marvel. We knew this. And then on July 15th, Mr. Peltz called Amy Chang, a member of the board from Procter & Gamble, or who was at Procter & Gamble, to convey that he was supportive of Bob Chapek and believed he could be helpful to him if he joined the board. Also on that date, Ike Perlmutter, a Disney employee technically, and the person who they bought Marvel from, reached out to Bob Chapek and Christy McCarthy to encourage consideration of Mr. Peltz as a director. He also called Safra Katz, who is on the board from Oracle, and to let her know that both he and Peltz support Bob Chapek, and that they believe that adding Peltz to the board would help counter recent headwinds he had faced, solidify his position as CEO, and preempt any other potential shareholder nominations at the 2023 annual meeting. He said without Mr. Peltz, former executives, including Mr. Iger, would be back at Disney. Okay? I mean, so Mr. Peltz his case is to be there so that Bob Iger does not come back to Disney. That's important. On July 16th, Peltz called Chapek again to express his desire, and they keep going back and forth, and so on and so forth. In August, Dan Loeb comes into the scene and provides his perspective, as well as Mr. Peltz contacts Christy McCarthy to once again reiterate that he wants to be on the board. They have a special board meeting on August 29th and to discuss Peltz, Perlmutter, and Loeb and what their perspective is on the company. So Dan Loeb brings out a thesis. He provides a strategy of what he thinks the company should do. Peltz does not. So they agree so they're looking at who's going to replace Susan Arnold, the current chairman, who's going to reach the limit, and they decide that they should engage with Third Point because they have a strategy about who they should add to the board of directors. So on September 21st, they meet with Loeb to discuss his perspective on what Disney should do, and so on and so forth. On September 29th, they agreed to add Carolyn Everson, mutually, beneficial director, and agree that they are not going to, put out a proxy fight.
Hey, Ben.
Yeah.
We do this in part so we can handle breaking news. We're going to interrupt breaking news with breaking news. Magic Keys are currently open for sale. Is this accurate, Kyle? Kyle, you're muted.
Yeah, they're on sale except for the Enchant Key is renewal only. The other 3 are available. Looks like there's currently a queue of over 50 minutes for me. I don't know what it is at the moment, but
yeah, this says more than an hour here. So yeah, as mentioned last week, they said they're going to be more dynamic on opening up Magic Key sales and annual pass holder sales when they're available instead of necessarily queuing them all up. And so here we go, just this morning. Coincidence?
And also the note there that pass sales will be paused Eastern at 10 p.m. We shared last time how I was in the queue overnight. So that's a little bit more transparency on how this system works there. So you're not waiting up all night. Not like I'm trying to buy one, I was observing.
The LP team, not on the air right now, I'm sure, is feverishly working on this. Stay tuned to laughingplace.com and here for more details later. But in the meantime, let's interrupt this breaking news with our other breaking news.
That's interesting. Okay, great. I'm glad that's happening. So I'm sorry. They add Carolyn. Basically, Dan Loeb's off the table. Everyone agrees. Once again, in October, November, they decide that they are going to make Mark Parker the new chairman, specifically calling out his ability to transition from CEO to executive chairman at Nike. On November 8th, they do that sort of famous quarterly earnings call. And Nelson Peltz calls Bob Chapek to let them know that they've acquired a position at Disney totaling $500 million with the intent of increasing it up to $1 billion. And that they intend to nominate a slate of directors at the 2023 annual meeting unless the company agreed to add Mr. Peltz to the board. On November 10th, Ike calls Safra Katz again, as well as Bob Chapek, Christine McCarthy, and Horatio Gutierrez, the head lawyer for Disney, once again to advocate Mr. Peltz being added to the board. Following the earnings call, Nelson Peltz invited Bob Chapek to have lunch with him in Palm Beach, and they met on November 12th. He met with Nelson Peltz as well as Ike Perlmutter, and they discussed adding Nelson Peltz to the board. During that time, he had several conversations with Christine McCarthy, in which he repeated that he would be doing a proxy fight if he's not added to the board. She offered to meet with him on November 28th, but he wasn't available and asked for November 23rd. Then they have a special board meeting, basically saying that they should be working directly with Christine McCarthy and Horatio Gutierrez as a designated point of contact, given the sort of escalating nature of the conversations. 3 days later, they fire Bob Chapek, and bring back Bob Iger. So on November 23rd, if you remember, that's the date Nelson wanted this meeting. Iger, McCarthy, and Gutierrez had a meeting with Nelson Peltz as well as his son and another representative of the Trian group, and Nelson reiterated his intention to mount a proxy fight if he was not added to the board. Bob Iger and Christine McCarthy asked if they were open to exploring a mutually acceptable independent director, and that Nelson responded he would only accept himself. He also did not provide any ideas as to what he would do on the board. They informed Nelson that there would be a board meeting on November 30th where they would discuss the matters, and the sort of ongoing back and forth regarding this whole rigmarole. They decided they're not going to offer him a seat, but they will just continue the conversations to try and reach an agreement, just as they had with Third Point. On November 28th, this is sort of not separate, but they're trying to show that Bob Iger's doing it. He had that town hall with Disney employees where he said he's basically doing everything, basically the presentation that Nelson copied for his presentation. Adding accountability, making streaming profitable, all those things. On December 1st, they informed Disney that they were going to basically nominate Mr. Peltz through a proxy situation. And there's some sort of ongoing back and forth about, the logistics of that, which isn't that interesting. But on December 20th, Nelson Peltz and Bob Iger spoke, and Nelson Peltz informed Bob Iger that if he was not given a board seat, he intended to mount a proxy fight that would challenge Bob Iger's legacy.
Well, I'll let you finish.
Then they had a board meeting on January 10th where they did their presentation, which we've seen, and talked about his experience, why he didn't like the 21st Century Fox acquisition, yada, yada, yada. He says that he doesn't want to fire Bob Iger, but that they are going to do a proxy fight if he's not added on the board. And so the board has conversations with and without Bob Iger and decide independently of Bob Iger that they're not going to add him to the board.
So that's where we're at today. So first of all, where can people find the more detailed timeline than what's here?
It's in the proxy statement, which is, I'm sure we're going to do a story linking to it on Laughing Place, or you can search the SEC website, which can be a little wonky. So if you want to just go to Laughing Place, we'll post a link to the proxy. They do not say where the annual meeting is going to be. I mean, they don't say when it's going to be, but they do say that it will be in 2023. I mean, virtually.
It will be.
Right, long day.
As the law dictates in 2023. Yeah. So many things in there, but one that really sticks out as provocative: to challenge Bob Iger's legacy. What is he saying?
He's threatening Bob Iger. That's what he's doing. I mean, but Nelson Peltz isn't going to challenge Bob Iger's what he doesn't realize is Bob Iger's legacy is strong. I mean, he's always going to have the caveats of
right.
APAC, but no one's looking at Bob Iger's term as a whole and saying it's unsuccessful. I mean, it's
right. It's like saying, the fact that Tom Brady got whooped yesterday challenges his legacy, and it doesn't. Right. But that's obvious. So it makes me wonder, is there something else there that he's referring to? Or I don't think if there was some secret thing, I don't think Disney would have put that statement in the proxy. I think they're trying to show that he's being a bully. So when you read the detailed timeline, what was going through your mind? What sticks out in your mind that may have not have been quite so obvious?
Well, I mean, I think there was reports that Ike was kind of doing all this cloak and dagger stuff that resulted in the departure of Peter Rice. There's this battle he has with Bob Iger, namely when Bob Iger took away his authority over Marvel Studios due to Kevin Feige's threatening to quit, because Ike is notoriously frugal, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, he's been very successful, but he's not the level of investment needed to make Captain America: Civil War, Avengers Endgame, all those things were not things that Ike was going to support. And so it seems like it's I mean, we talked about it, even before Ike, we knew Ike was officially in the, we always kind of suspected due to the closeness of the relationship, but between him and Nelson Peltz, but this is personal and this is stupid. I mean, we said, well, why is Iger so upset with Nelson Peltz for wanting to be on the board? Why does Iger care? Well, if this guy is always upset about, if the guy who's notoriously cheap is pushing for somebody to join the board as a way to challenge Bob Iger because he's upset with the things Bob Iger has done and the way Bob Iger has spent money, you need to make a choice. Do you think Bob Iger is Bob Iger your guy or is Ike your guy? That's really what this is about.
So some high-profile people came out in favor of putting him on the board last week. Do you think this changes any minds? Do you think
I don't know. I mean, I haven't had a
just
chance to monitor that. I mean, I'm curious if it has. Obviously, I shouldn't say obviously. All the financial business news is out of Davos this week. So, I think it's unfortunate they weren't able to get this information out earlier. But, I don't know.
Because, I mean, so are there any surprises in here? Let's ask it that way. Did anything surprise you about this document? Disney's response.
Yeah, I think the persistence. Nelson put out a timeline which was not nearly as detailed and eliminated a lot of facts in there. And so you go like, this guy just sounds like whiny, right? Like, I want to be on the board. I want to be on the board. Why do you want to be on the board? Well, I don't know. Why not? Literally, I mean, that's literally what he said. So, we looked at his case and we go like, okay, like, what's the harm? But now you go like, if it's personal, do you need that drama? If he had a plan, a strategy, that's one thing. But just to be on the board, that's not how this should work. I want to be on the board.
So I feel like, you deserve it. You have my thought. I feel like this is thing campaign ad A. Oh yeah, he makes good points. Campaign ad B. Oh wait, yeah, no, he rebutted all those points. And now I'm waiting for campaign ad C. And I really wonder if that'll come, because just like in a court case, when the defense finishes, a lot of times you're thinking, yeah, they pretty much put back everything the prosecution said, and then the prosecution gets to put on their rebuttal. And I wonder if that's where we're at, or if this is it, because right now, based on what we've seen now, this seems so cut and dry, but I just doubt it is.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know how this is going to impact the people that own a lot of shares. I mean, we know Ike. I don't know how everyone knows Ike. And there's going to be a lot of conversations. There's going to be a lot of politicking. I mean, there was politicking under the Roy Disney stuff too. This is not the end of it. No, people are going to look at these two slides decks and be like, okay, I'm voting for this. They're going to change their mind. They're going to go back and forth. They're going to think.
Now, the way laws work, I know there's strict stuff with the SEC. Are large shareholders allowed to call up Nelson Peltz and Bob Iger and get into more details on this, or is that something that's not permitted?
Well, they can't say. What can they? I mean, they can make their case. They can share their thoughts, but I mean, they're not going to give you any details that are not public. But they can spin them. So,
one thing I wanted to mention about that kind of helps Disney fans understand Ike Perlmutter is it used to be that Kevin Feige, as part of Marvel Studios, which was under Marvel, reported to Ike and not to the studio chief. And then that got cut around so that he could have a little bit more creative freedom. So that kind of tells you a little bit about Perlmutter's.
Yeah, I mean, that was the big dust up. Remember when there was that conversation about whether Iron Man was going to be able to be in Civil War, right? They wanted to make Civil War, but Ike didn't want to pay Robert Downey Jr. And it was then that they were able to work out a deal after they kind of moved everything around. Then they were able to say, okay, we're going to make a deal for Spider-Man and all that stuff. So, from a fan's perspective, I think it's pretty clear how you vote. I mean, you're going to side with Iger. I don't know if this is not necessarily the way they do everything.
Purely speculation. Is this Perlmutter and Peltz having the same goals in teaming up, or has one of them enlisted the other to try to achieve whatever goals they have?
I mean, I think they're not. Nelson's not going to invest if he doesn't think he's right. I mean, I don't think he's going to do this as a favor, But I mean, because it's not his money. It's I mean, he leads the group, but it's not all. Now, a fair chunk of that might be Ike's money, right? He might be invested with this guy, but I think they're buddy, and they. I mean, I think they believe they're right. I just think it's, everyone, I don't think you meet any people who think they're wrong about something or doing it, doesn't convince themselves that they're doing the right thing. But yeah, I mean, they're definitely, I mean, they're both calling. I mean, this is coordinated. It's not like they said, Nelson says, hey, call me, like, I mean, it's literally the next day. Though I'm sure the only reason Nelson started all of this was conversations with Ike, right? He's not randomly meeting. I mean, this is completely out of his wheelhouse.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of where I was going with that is how key is Ike to this whole thing? And
you gotta remember when Ike owned Marvel, it was really a licensing company, right? It was a toy company,
right?
Hard good. It wasn't an entertainment. I mean, they made comic books, but it wasn't. They didn't have movies or television. I mean, and to his credit, he created that business, but it's it's different now.
How is Bob Chapek just getting a little bit of sunshine in his dreary post-Disney day, reading all this and watching all this?
I don't know. I mean, I think that's another point. I support Bob Chapek. I support Bob Chapek. I support Bob Chapek. Seems like, is that your claim? Is that the one thing you wanted was to support Bob Chapek?
But then the thing he always can throw back there was, well, Iger chose Bob Chapek. It's really his.
Sure. I mean, we all agree on that, right? I mean, Bob Iger didn't come, he didn't wash his hands of the situation. He came back.
Trying to fix it.
He's trying to fix it. I mean, whether he will or not, who knows? But do you want Nelson Peltz to pick the next CEO of the Walt Disney Company? I mean, it's not a rhetorical question. I mean, that's the question you have to ask yourself when you're voting.
It is a good question, and the obvious answer seems like no until you remember who Bob Iger picked.
Right.
Hopefully, he's learned from his mistakes, or maybe because it's not one person picking it, isn't it? Is it better Bob Iger and a rubber stamp board, or Bob Iger plus Nelson? It's how some people.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, the question is how much of a rubber stamp do you think the board's going to be this time? I don't know that it's going to be as.
Yeah. But even if it's not, do you think Nelson's input will make for a better choice?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think so, but that's a good question you need to ask.
Yeah. So we're going to have more on the actual proxy that was released today, and I'm sure Ben will have more thoughts on this later, not only today, but throughout the week. There will be responses going all over the place. This story is far from done, but we're going to move on to another very interesting story from this morning. Ben, why don't you tell us what happened?
Pivot.
Well, I met with a man named Josh Tomorrow, along with some other fan sites. And we met at the boardwalk. And the point, he didn't really have anything he specifically wanted to address, but he wanted to create an ongoing dialogue, not just with us as fan sites, but with fans, with cast. I mean, I think it's he talks about how he joined Instagram to kind of send info to cast, and that he just wants to be open. He says, I don't mind being open because I got nothing to hide. He goes, my heart's in the right place. I mean, we might make mistakes, but then we'll own it. If I tried to justify everything we did and said we never make mistakes, then I'd want to hide. But I don't want to hide because we try to do something. There's a good reason for it, whether, and if we screw up, we'll do what we did last week. We'll adjust. And so he goes he's like, the communications team never wants me to talk to anybody. Basically, he's like, what are they going to do? Ask me a question? Like, oh no. So
about how you said it was at the boardwalk, about how long was the meeting?
Were you sitting in the creepy chairs?
No, it was at the attic for those that know convention space at the boardwalk. It was, I want to say it was about an hour. There was a lot of, sort of, schmoozing kind of time, and then, taking pictures, and as well as they asked us to record a message for the cast. Like, they didn't give us any direction. They said, can you record a message for the cast? And what would you want? What do you want to tell them? So, we were up there for a little bit. So I guess it started at 9. Well, we met 9:30. So it was a while. It was, maybe an hour and a half for the whole thing.
I know. Go ahead. Correct.
No. So, he started with his, sort of treatise of like, we care about our fans. I am a fan. He gave he gave kind of his fan street cred, talking about when he was at Disneyland, starting at Disneyland in a cubicle, about how he couldn't believe that he got to work there. So, it was neat. I think a lot of us questioned, why does Josh get credit and Bob Iger get blamed? Bob Chapek get blamed. This is, after you spend time with him, it's hard to think that this man could ever intentionally do wrong. Now, I mean, obviously he's very persuasive, and
I feel like our own,
one
of our own reporters pretty much said the same thing after meeting with Bob Chapek twice.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wasn't there for that one. I would be less keen to buy into that, but no, I mean, because he goes, honestly, this was unlike Bob Chapek, this was on the record. We couldn't record it, but I can tell you what he said, and he's basically, because why not? Like, what am I going to do? Say something that you don't agree with? Like, I'm going to be honest with you. So
that's interesting. I mean, I want to get to specifics, but that's interesting. Bob Chapek did 2 of these. I've never heard of any of these. I've been doing this for 20 plus years. I haven't heard of any of these. All of a sudden, Bob Chapek does 2, and now Josh D'Amaro does 1. That feels like that can't be a coincidence, but that is an important distinction. Chapek's were definitely off the record, and this is on the record.
Well, and I think too, I think there's an understanding that these things might not have needed to be necessary. Companies have evolved the way they need to communicate with their audience, and I'm not trying to make us sound great, but the fan base is more vocal because they have a bigger microphone, just like anything, right? Politicians, everybody has a bigger microphone these days because of various outlets, and so I think this seemed like it was the start of a conversation. He talked about we'll do park walks, we'll meet with you individually and all those things. But it seemed to be the kickoff of it. Now, whether it was inspired by Bob Chapek or whatnot, who knows? But or was Bob Chapek inspired by Josh? Right? Did Josh say I want to do these? And Bob's like, oh no, I'll do it. But I mean, making it on the record to me is a huge deal, because once he says something, they can't come back to me and say, oh, that's not on the record. I mean, they could, but I'm not going to perform. So, there's trusting your executive enough to say something that doesn't reflect poorly is gutsy.
So, specific question. I'm sure there was Q&A from you and others. Specific questions and answers.
Yeah. So, I'm just going to. Yeah, I'm sorry, I got to look at my notes. It was.
I guess he didn't tell you that Magic Key sales were going up today.
No,
6 minutes. 6 minutes.
He did say they were coming back soon. He did not say today.
He means in like 20 minutes on the West Coast.
He means what he says, man.
Just a couple of things that I took away from it. I mean, obviously we had he kind of told us the news about entertainment. I'll talk about it. He talked about how entertainment. He was saying he was up, I guess last week. Christmas Day. He was up on the train station watching the Disneyland band in Town Square, and he talked about how it gave him a different feeling than the attractions do, and that while guests may not necessarily put that on their survey as something that's important, he says it is important to the guest experience. So giving credit to Denise from Outsteps, asked specifically about entertainment. She asked about specific acts, and he's like, I can speak more generally. He says their goal is to get more entertainment back, whether it's new or legacy entertainment. And specifically, he talked about how Enchanted Tales with Belle and Ariel, the Ariel meet and greets reopening at the Magic Kingdom, which will officially be announced later this afternoon. But if you're having an on-record conversation, it's
on the record. That's one of the cool things about being on the record is that we now have those dates out there and they can't take them back.
Right.
What else?
There was a question about Genie Plus and Genie, and he kind of pivoted it to more about Genie because it wasn't him moving it. That was kind of the question was phrased about Genie, not necessarily Genie Plus. And how if you do it, it doesn't give you what you think, what a Disney fan would suggest you do. It doesn't give the conventional sort of Disney wisdom on it. And he says, it's not meant for us. It's not meant for people who know what they're doing, but that he does believe that guests who haven't been there, if you put in what you want to do, it will deliver on that. And he says it's always learning too and getting better. I don't know. We're not checking that because it was pretty looked pretty stupid when we first did it, but it is supposed to get better as it learns. Like, oh, we said do this, and they didn't actually get to do everything. So, but he says regular guests are satisfied with it.
Okay.
And and we've even heard that with Genie Plus. I mean, not today, but we've heard how Genie Plus people who pay for it like it. The bigger question is people who don't pay for it probably don't like it.
So it sounds like we should have Jeremiah do another Genie Day when he has free time.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. Mike
Celestino. Someone take notes. Put that on the list. He says park hopping will continue to get easier, and they're still trying to thread that needle, and it's going to probably be different at both sites. He says you want it to be the same thing. More generally, you want things to be the same at all the locations where you can, but they're all different animals, so you can't always have them be consistent.
Yeah, park hopping at Disneyland versus Walt Disney World is never going to be anywhere.
Right? Yeah, I mean, because if you park hop at Walt Disney World, you literally have to make an effort.
When the Hyperloop comes around,
you have to earmark at least a half hour for that, no matter what method of transportation you take, even if it's walking from one park to the other. Whereas I think it takes maybe 3 minutes to get from Disneyland to DCA if the line is long.
Yeah.
And then I asked a question about whether, I talked about how in November of 2020, he talked about dreaming big, like going to the moon, right? Like how do we dream big? And I kind of brought up, I feel people were a little disappointed after Expo that there wasn't this reveal of a big plan, right? Is that you saying you were disappointed?
No, I was gonna say, didn't we already go to the moon in 1950 or 60 something at Disneyland?
Yeah. Well, there's actually a connection here that he didn't bring up, but I'm going to bring up. But anyway, and I said, are you guys there's AJ from Food Blog brought up are you raising prices at the park to pay for stuff Disney streaming? I was like, I'm less concerned about the price of water, but are you not able to execute on your dreams because your big plans because there's no money? And he goes, no. And give an unequivocal no. We are not limited by money. There's plenty of money.
Well, that begs the question.
I disagree with you, Josh, but
so then you followed up with where the heck are those plans, right?
Yeah, and he says they're in development. He says there's so much that he talked about how he tried to give a little reveal at Expo. I don't think that was perfectly executed, but that there's even more big dreams that are happening in Imagineering, but they're just not ready. And he says I want to be careful because if I announce it and then we pivot a little bit, you hear about it. He wants it to be ready. And so I'm not now. This is me saying it's I get it that Expo happens when Expo happens. Expo doesn't happen when Josh is ready to announce a project. But he is very, and with the core of his being, is very excited about the big plans that they have. And I express okay, well, I think people are ready for him. People want to have an idea because I feel after COVID, people just need that pep rally. But because to me, that was the ultimate question, right? Is Disney not investing in parks because of COVID, or are they not investing in the parks because of paying down debt? And he's like we're investing in big ways. Now it's not necessarily shown yet on the earnings sheet, but it sounds like he's like, we never have invested more.
Do you believe him?
I believe him because I don't think he would lie. I don't, spin sure. I don't think he would lie, and it's also something that will be completely verifiable.
Yeah,
if you're going to lie about something that won't,
not that I don't think he would lie, and I guess ultimately you have to be on your own timeline. It's just with all the criticism right now and all the heat Disney Plus is taking for stealing away from the parks. Why would they not want to put it out there? Some more specifics.
Well, I think it's interesting. I think that there's no question WDI slowed down. They lost people for the pandemic. They lost people with this theoretical move to Florida. I think they are. I think things move slower now. And I don't think that's a permanent. I think they need to recalibrate. Obviously, they have a new leader in Barbara. Taken over from Bob Weiss. So I think, and obviously with Bob Iger coming in, you're not going to announce it a week later, a big corporate and capital expenditure plan. I mean, I think this has been our frustration with Bob Iger's return. Is just we don't have that plan yet for DMAD. We don't have that plan for the media. We don't know what any of the long-term plans are. Nelson Peltz doesn't have them either. But we're ready to hear what the big plan is, and maybe we'll hear sooner than later.
Anything else strike you? Specific questions or anything? We want to hear it all. We weren't there.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm sorry. You're trying to take notes while looking him in the eye because it's a lot.
You mentioned the dates for Enchanted Tales, and
he didn't. We got that after the fact, but
right. But I'm saying you mentioned that we can say what those are.
Yeah, we can.
They're on our Twitter. I have to look them up.
I don't know what they are.
We got it right here. I hope.
January 22nd for Ariel's Grotto and February 19th for Enchanted Tales with Belle.
He did. A lot of it was storytelling, and one thing he did mention, he was at the park, and he saw two people come up and ask for a picture, but they all had this like stern looks on their face, right? And so he's like, I knew what was going to happen after the picture, And they said, we were annual pass holders, but we're not Magic Key folks. We're not Magic Key. And he said, okay, can I ask why? And he said, they said, well, we don't want to make, it's too difficult to make reservations. So he goes, well, what's difficult about it? And he goes, like, is the website, hard? He goes like, oh no, it's really easy. And so he goes like, so what's the issue? And he goes, well, I'm sorry, I go back. The first question he asked him was like, are you having a good time? And they go, oh yeah, we're having a great time today. But so then they go, well, what's the issue? What's the issue? He says, well, we want to be able to come whenever we want. And he says, well, okay, I can respect that. Yeah, I totally get why you'd want to come whenever you want. But doesn't it feel less crowded? Do you know how many people would be here if we opened it up for everybody? He's kind of gave an example of like, I can't just open up the boardwalk and say anyone who wants to go to the boardwalk can come. And when the rooms are filled up, we just start putting them in the hallways and things like that. He's like, there's a capacity to it. And they go like, yeah, you mentioned it. It feels, a little bit more enjoyable today. So then of course, and so then they said, so yeah, we'll get a Magic Key, but they're not available for sale. And he's like, okay, they're coming sooner than he, I guess, admitted to us. So he talked about that as an example of like just talking to guests and how he wants to do that more often. And now when he goes to the park, he doesn't go with an entourage, and he's free to he's happy to talk to guests. I'm sure, please be professional and respectful, but if you see him at the park, feel free to talk to him. He's not discouraging of that. He likes it.
That's a funny one to choose because all of that's perfectly logical, except as we talk about all the time, the parks are still packed. It's not like, oh yeah, now that you mentioned, it's not that crowded in here. That's not.
Well, it's true, but then you wonder, like, so what would have happened if there was no reservation?
Oh no, definitely not. But it just seems like the whole point of reservations is to make the day more enjoyable. Maybe it's more enjoyable than it would have been, but it does not feel like it's
right. Well, I mean, and the question I didn't have a chance to ask, but is because there was a group of us and we didn't have all that much time, was, well, if the problem is capacity, why don't you add more capacity? Like, why? Where's that? We're waiting on that, which kind of ties into the other thing. But
what is that? We're opening 2 attractions back.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a huge.
I would have called him out on that. I'd be like, measured, meaningful capacity. So
I also wanted to point out, like, tying our whole morning together on one of the slides in Disney's proxy, fighting back again, the rebuttal to Nelson Peltz that has like things we're already doing. And one of the things is like parks, like making it easier for people, whatever. And it's like, oh yeah, the thing you announced a day before you announced this, and he didn't say it specifically because we didn't have a chance to ask, but it sounded like that was not reactionary. I mean, it might be it's included in this discussion, but it sounds like that is not necessarily reactionary. I will say, he did say that to expect more of those kinds of things, tweaks that to show that they're listening to guest feedback.
Rebecca says that discussion with the guest didn't touch about a lot of things. She hears cancellation changes, last minute opportunities with guests in town, etc. I mean, I don't for a minute doubt that conversation happened, but I can't imagine similar conversations have happened with other guests where the disagreements were more pointed.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was an example. You know, it was already a long story. I don't think, you know. I mean, I'm sure there was more detail, and I'm sure
No,
he's had
and
other conversations with other guests.
not that this is the forum, but it's just, yes, there are legit criticisms of the system beyond Josh Tomorrow talking to this guest. And
Yeah, I
guess
mean,
everything is great.
some of those criticisms, he talks about, like, he goes, yeah, it's not going to be, you know, there's going to be more limitations. I admit that. You know, you're not going to be able to just show up at the last minute. That's
so, you know, some people were hoping that this the whole reservation system was a Chapek thing, and that maybe that would go away at some point. It definitely does not sound like that's the case.
does not sound like that's the case. He did talk about how he stays up at night. Like, he knows the impact it has on people, and it does, quote, keep him up at night, but that he thinks the trade-off is worth it. You know, in that he doesn't believe that making Disneyland a free-for-all is the right choice. And so I do not, it does not seem like that was a Chapek decision. I mean, I'm sure there was conversations between the two of them about it, but it does not look like that's going to be going away.
Raise the prices.
Which is, I mean, I agree with him. I don't think the reservation system should go away. I mean, I think there needs to be a capacity, even if the parks are crowded, if they're still turning people away through the reservations, so they'd be even more crowded. And the alternative that they used to do was you would show up and not be able to get in, even if you thought you were going to. And I think that's far worse.
That is worse. But the thing I just can't understand is that was rare. That happened rarely, that the parks closed. What is so different now?
The demand is way up. I mean, there's no question. I mean, it's not even just Disney.
Why?
Demand for experiences is way up. It's a cultural change.
That's just crazy to me.
People spend a lot more on experiences than they do on products these days. No question. I mean, that's a well documented fact. And I think obviously COVID had a role in it. People missed having experiences, and so they value them more. You know, they looked around their house and they saw their Amazon packages that they don't need, of stuff they don't need, and you know, they can't say that they were ever going to actually use that gym they bought because they never have time. Well, they had time and they still didn't use it. So I think there's a systemic change outside of Disney about people spending money on experiences. You see it in tickets, like concert ticket sales go faster now. It's all those things. That's a change. And so Disney did not ramp up demand, supply. So demand is way up, and this is hence the problem that we've discussed.
Theaters, box office does not reflect that.
Not movie theaters is correct, but there's even been a resurgence of a certain type of spectacle. Sports is up, absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm not sure you're wrong either. That reservation system doesn't increase demand. In fact, I'm not sure that's wrong either. You might. I mean, I'm sure your numbers are right. Who knows how long term this will be? And I'm sure if it turns out not to be the case, and they can dump them, they will. But I assume I'm guessing they think this is probably a cultural shift in America. So there's one real way to increase demand, increase supply, and that's to add more parks. Do you think that's in the future?
Yes. I don't know. I shouldn't say. I don't know that more gates are in the park, and gates at Disneyland and Walt Disney World. I don't know if that's in the cards. But I will say the gate. I would expect the parks that they do have to expand, because adding parks is not really additive at this point. And you may see things like Universal announced, you know, where there's other experiences outside of, the main destinations.
Like,
he's what's that?
Like have a play pavilion, but like in Chicago or something.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, you got the sense that, and this is a sense, not a word, just from his reading between the lines, that there's a lot that needs to be announced. And I encouraged him to announce it. That the problem right now is that people understood during COVID. I don't think anyone complained when they canceled things during COVID. I mean, I'm sure somebody did, but yeah, always somebody. But that's understandable. Parks aren't open. You're going to need to cancel things. But people are now ready to, outside of Tiana, which isn't really additive. I mean, it's not additive at all.
Anyway,
there's nothing on the deck. And I think, he said, well, I tried to reveal. I was like, yeah, but people took that as you may. And he goes, it's not a we may. It's just we need to finish it.
Yeah.
And so I go like, well,
Color me
then maybe
skeptical.
say something. Say that
I
this
know.
is, I mean, and you don't need to, and I'm sure there's all sorts of, levers they need to pull. And, I'm sure the leadership transition didn't help, sort of, everyone, I'm sure, I mean, just like you would if your boss changed, right? You freeze until you get told what to do. I'm sure that happened. So I'm hoping that in the next months, not years, we will be getting, or I'm sorry, even weeks. I mean, we're expecting another update in a couple weeks, and hopefully we'll have more to say then, based on our feedback.
I would love to hear what the other people in that room, how their overall impression of Josh D'Amaro. I know you've had some experience with him, so I don't know how much yours changed, but this, for a lot of people, this could be a lot of people in that room, perhaps their first time being able to speak directly to Josh D'Amaro. And I would love.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you'll get to. I mean, they're all media, so I'm guessing you'll hear their take sometime.
I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's I don't think anyone left that room. They might not have left satisfied, but I don't think anyone could leave that room not liking the guy. I mean, literally, it took us forever to get. We met in the lobby, and then he literally said hello to every cast member we passed. Not just a hello, and they would wave at him and say, "Oh, good to see you again, Josh." Right? And I was like, okay, maybe this is just, you could say, okay, this is like a show he's putting on for us. But I saw him before he saw us, and he was doing the same thing walking down the hallway. Now, part of that is being a politician at the parks, right? He knows he's Josh, but they all should have known that in the past, and they didn't do it, right? Michael Eisner didn't do it. Bob Iger doesn't do it. Bob Chapek certainly didn't do it.
Now,
and
did he get up?
I think he's a good man. Whether you agree with his decisions or not, I think his heart is in the right place, and that's what he wanted to convey. Now, when you want to convey your heart's in the right place, it's easy to be swindled. But I'm, I mean, like I said, when Bob Iger came back, like, I'm willing to be optimistic. I'm willing to believe it until he proves me wrong, right? Like, what's the harm in believing he's trying to do the right thing until you're proven otherwise?
Did he stand up and say, "We have all these plans we're ready to announce as long as Mr. Peltz doesn't get in the way"?
No. Nelson Peltz did not get mentioned. Literally, the proxy came as I saw it come as he was walking up to us. I mean, obviously, he might have access that we didn't, see it before. And I'm like, this is and quite frankly, kudos to him, because there's a lot of drama going on, and he still did this. Which, I mean, he probably didn't expect the financial balance sheet questions I threw at him, but well, it's funny. The other funny thing too is he goes like, so about the moon. So he talked about how he had lunch at Walt's apartment before he became president of Disneyland, and with Michael Colglazer, who is now at Virgin Galactic, and talked about how, he went up to the window and he said, all these folks now, you need to take care of them, right? And Michael Colglazer says, these are your people that you need to take care of.
Everything the light touches.
Right. Yeah, it felt very Simba Mufasa moment. And yeah, it's as I said, you can be a cynic, and I certainly can understand that. But I'm a little, I will self-disclose. I'm tired of cynicism, and so we'll see what happens. I mean, if we're here this time next year and there's no plans, then I'll be like, this is taking too long. This is, I don't buy it. But if in weeks, we get more, even if it starts slow, it's not going to be the world's biggest projects announced right now. But as long, and he said they've never been short of money, right? So if it's just getting the idea done, getting it, thought all the way through, then okay, you have some time, but you don't have forever time.
Well, it's been 2 weeks of good news between all the stuff announced with the hotels, and while reservations are still here, there is now the ability in Disney World to go to parks without reservations at certain times. Most times, frankly, as long as it's after a certain hour. And then, of course, this morning, our breaking news this morning that the Magic Key at Disneyland is once again for sale. At least 3 levels are as of last check. I know Kyle is keeping his eye on that. Do you have any updates on queue time and what passes are available, Kyle?
I hit the wrong button.
I was like, no.
No, I don't. Leave me alone. I got in after I originally waited. It still says more than an hour. No updates on what's available. So it's still the 3. And something I kind of glazed over. I mentioned it was the Enchant Key, which people might not remember what one that is. That is the second highest. So the highest Enchant Key is still one of the ones available. Or sorry, the Inspire Key is that is the highest. Pretty sure. That's still available. Enchant Key is the one that's renewals only currently.
Can I just ask one more thing?
Yeah.
If anyone watching this has questions for Josh, please send them to us, because this sounds like this is going to become a regular thing. And and it's not just selfishly for us. I mean, he wants to know what people think. And so if you have questions or nothing, we're not going to just complain to him. But if you want to understand why a decision was made that you might not agree with, please let us know what those are so that we can ask about them next time.
Definitely. Email us at pretty much anything at laughingplace.com. How about editor@laughingplace.com? That's a good way to get to us. I did think regarding Magic Key, Scott Gustin, well known in this Twitter, got the statement from a Disneyland officials. As we shared last week, we're making select Magic Key passes available for new sales through 2023. As past inventory becomes available to meet the incredible ongoing demand voiced by our guests. And boom, there it is. Just as they promised, as inventory becomes available, we will make sales available. It's nice to see them. Ben will be back later with more proxy talk. We're going to say goodbye to him for now. But it's nice to see them, in the words of the politicians, that this whole Nelson Peltz thing seems to be promises made, promises kept. So, yeah,
we're going to say if Nelson does get on the board, we can say Disney got pelted. And that sort of wordplay excites me.
And that is why Kyle is voting all his shares for
all dozen or so of them.
All right, we're going to bring on Mr. Mike Celestino,
Woo.
Star Wars man extraordinaire. We're also going to remember to turn off the banner. Kyle, can you create a banner? I never spell Mandalorian right, so can you create one for the Mandalorian trailer? Mike, how you doing?
A good rule of thumb, contrary to popular belief, there's no O in Mandalorian. Actually, there is one O. Sorry, there's no O where you think there's an O.
Okay,
but it's not where you think.
Yeah, it's not where you think.
It's Mandalorian.
Mandalorian.
You say Mando.
Mando is the abbreviated version. Although I'm reading some of the old expanded universe stuff, and Mandi, Mandie, is what they used to abbreviate it back then. So
isn't that how Billy Joel sang about him? Mandy. Yeah. Anyway, how you doing, Mike?
I was Copacabana boy.
So Mike Celestino, yesterday they put out a new trailer for season 3 of The Mandalorian, and not only did you get to see the trailer, but you got to see it between 2 halves of great football. How was last night for you?
Guess what? I did not watch 1 second of football because your wife was letting me know how close we were to halftime, and I just was there refreshing the Star Wars YouTube channel. Didn't have to turn on the TV at all.
Wow, you did not get the full experience. All right, let's go ahead and watch that trailer together, and then we're going to talk to Mike about it. I haven't seen this yet. I'm excited. I only watched football.
Our people are scattered like stars in the galaxy. What are we? What do we stand for? Being a Mandalorian is not just learning about how to fight. You also have to know how to navigate the galaxy. That way, you'll never be lost. I'm going to Mandalore, so that I may be forgiven for my transgressions.
May the Force be with you!
This is the way.
There's something dangerous happening out there. And by the time it becomes big enough for you to act, it'll be too late.
Hang on, kid. This is the way.
So, Mike, before we get into the specifics, now you did write a lengthy article doing, I believe it was a shot-by-shot breakdown. Is that what you called it?
I did. And as of this moment, I'm aware of 2 incorrect assumptions already from there based on the other breakdowns that I've seen this morning.
Hey, that's okay. I mean, that's the fun in all this, trying to speculate the heck out of this until it drops in March. So I'm not going to ask you to go through that. That article's on here. I'm sure you're going to go through it also on Who's the Boss later this week. So I'm just going to ask some questions. First of all, what were your emotions watching the trailer?
You know, I will say this trailer didn't get me any more excited than I already was, but I was already incredibly excited. As you know, I put it as my number 1 most anticipated thing of this year coming from Disney. But in a way, I'm okay with that because I know that they are trying to play it pretty close to the vest. They're not trying to reveal too much before we get to see it in the show. So I'm perfectly fine if this is all we get to see. There were some interesting shots in here that we can talk about. There were some cool reveals, but not too many. I would say they are, they're trying to keep things secret as much as they can. And it's not too easy to tell what is actually going on in this season. I think Alex from Star Wars Explained this morning pointed out that there's one little plot line that you can kind of figure out if you piece together some of the shots from the trailer. But other than that, it's tough to say what the rest, the other 7 episodes of this season are really going to be about. And I kind of like that about it.
Oh, absolutely. I love those surprises too. Like I said, you did a full shot by shot, and I'm not going to go through all of that here, but there's maybe 1 or 2 that you want to specifically mention.
Yeah. Well, I'll start with my bold prediction. So there's a shot of the character named Carson Teva, who is the Asian gentleman who's in the New Republic security force. He's kind of a space cop, and he's talking to someone. There's a little bit of editing trickery going on in this shot. If you scroll down 1, there he is. That's Carson Teva, and he's talking about, there's something big going on in the galaxy, and you're not going to act until it's too big to stop, basically. And then the next shot it cuts to is a shot of the Mandalorian, Din Djarin, but that's a completely different location because we know this is a shot of him in the throne room on Mandalore. So there's some obfuscation. Is that the right word? Going on here. And I'm predicting that Mon Mothma is the character that he's talking to in the New Republic. And I think that Genevieve O'Reilly from Andor and Rogue One is going to be in this series as well. But that's just a guess based on what we saw here. And then the other really cool shot that jumped out to me is the droid cantina. I think everybody's kind of freaking out about this concept of this place where droids are going, and they look like they're all like plugged in to a power source at each table. And there's just like a lot of fun different droids in here, and you can see on the very right hand edge of the screen is an RX series pilot droid. You might know from Star Tours. And some battle droids, of course, astromechs. There's a droid in the background called a CZ droid, or I think CZ1, and that's an obscure droid from the original Star Wars film that you can see walking around Mos Eisley Spaceport. So this is just a fun idea and something that we haven't really seen before.
And I know my wife in particular is very excited about the droid. She loves droids. That's why she married one. Awesome. Yeah, it's an exciting scene. And then, surprise, surprise, apparently the trailer on YouTube is not the entire thing. There's something a little extra if you watch the trailer on Disney Plus, Mike.
I'm very curious how this happened. I wonder if there was an earlier version that got approved and then somebody requested that the shot was removed, but both versions, they missed, there was a mistake on some end, or if they just wanted to give Disney Plus subscribers a little bonus. Yeah, this is an extra shot that's in there in the middle. And it's a shot of a Star Destroyer. And I said in my description, it's either being decommissioned or built. And it looks like they're in a developed planet. My guess was either Coruscant or Corellia, where they build a lot of the ships. So I think that's pretty interesting. There's two figures in the foreground watching this Star Destroyer undergo some kind of transformation. So there's a lot of talk of the Empire potentially preparing for a return. As we know, it happens in the form of the First Order. So I think this could be building toward that.
And I just want to thank Eckert's Ladder for that tweet, pointing that out. That's where I first saw it was mentioned. There's an extra scene, and then they were also kind enough to brighten it up so we could see it even better. So thanks so much for that. Star Wars and hockey YouTuber. Cool. Anything else about the trailer or the football game you want to get in there? They also, did you see? Dang it, I don't have this prepared. If someone happens to have it, but
it seems Mike was about as prepared for that game as the Bucks were.
Who's the guy that has the dark saber?
Moff Gideon.
Yeah, Moff Gideon. The actor actually did a promo for the game itself early in the game. Did you happen to see that?
I didn't, but Rebecca told me about it. Giancarlo Esposito.
Yeah, where they showed your guys spiking the ball with 0 time left. That was nice of them, wasn't it?
You're being mean. This is last year.
I'm not being mean. They did it. They're the ones who chose to focus on that, and
did they really show that during that? That's just cruel. That's just cruel.
He's like, something about expectations, and they showed that moment.
All right, I'm trying to see.
I was like, whoa, Doobie just sitting down trying to get hype for a game. And
all right, I think I got it here because I'd like to show it to Mike because he didn't see it because he didn't watch it.
Okay, great.
But let me make sure I've got it here. Nope, this is old. Sorry, I don't have it. Okay, if someone happens to have it, I'd love to see it.
The other thing I'll mention about the trailer that I know Rebecca is excited for is it sure seems like R5D4, aka the droid with the bad motivator from the first Star Wars movie, is getting his time to shine in this season because he does get sucked up into the droid socket of that Naboo starfighter that Mando's flying around in, and he gets to go on his own adventure now. So he just had to wait. He just had to wait 46 whatever years.
I found the thing. I sent it in the private chat.
Okay, I think I got it here. So much going on. Yeah, here it is. All right.
Before he says what the thing is called, you should see if Mike knows.
Do you know what that is, Mike?
Is that the Heisman Trophy?
There you go. There you go. Perfect.
Is that right? No.
That isn't just a solid object.
It's Lombardi.
It's a symbol that taunts from a distance. And the quest to reach it, like every journey, begins with a single step.
I never been scared of the lights and the fame.
This one.
Flame.
Now is when challenges must be accepted and the moment seized. It matters not if you've traveled this road before. Desire doesn't fade with age.
I hit him when that fright down up.
Need does increase over time, intensified by the sour taste of expectations unfulfilled.
History's in the past. This ain't the same Dallas Cowboys.
Fire the cannon, the Bucks. It beats.
They've earned this chance.
Yeah.
Now they must take it. And if they have enough effort to give, this is what they'll receive.
The Lombardi Trophy is going back home as the confetti flies.
Rings for the Rams! Dallas Cowboys and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Hear me. The symbol of the game's ultimate success issues its call. Answer
I think the Pepsi guy would argue that they said that if you win the Super Bowl, you get a jet.
A squadron of fighter jets.
Did you watch that one too, Kyle?
Yes, I watched that one too. All 4 episodes of something that didn't need to be 4 episodes.
Oh, 1 episode on 5. Kyle, my documentary buddy. I like this. All right, Mike. Where can people find you? When's the next Who's the Boss?
Who's the Boss this week is going to be on Thursday at 1 p.m. Pacific time.
And who'd you guest?
A couple dudes from another podcast called A Certain Point Askew.
Is there a Kevin Smith fan?
Could be. I don't know. Unfortunately, I haven't listened to their show. They were nice enough to agree to come on when I reached out to them. I've just been like kind of Twitter searching for whoever's talking about the Bad Batch enthusiastically and see if they want to come on the show. So
nice. Well, I'd be curious. I'll have to check this out because when so Kevin Smith's production company is View Askew. So whenever I hear Askew, I just assume that they're talking about that.
Could very well be.
Thank you, Mike. Who's the Boss on Thursday live here. And of course, you can subscribe to the podcast where Mike talks Star Wars and all things Lucasfilm. He also writes on Simpsons and Fraggle Rock and Muppets and anything else no one else wants to cover here on Laughing Place. So appreciate having you, Mike.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Take care. Yeah, we've got some background artists going on. We don't call them extras anymore, Kyle. We call them background artists. Of all people, you should know that.
I know.
Former professional.
As I'm wearing my fake high school sweatshirt.
Have you seen the Glee one, the Glee Curse or whatever it's called?
I haven't watched it. I didn't know it was out yet. I recognize people, and there's some. I haven't seen anyone like actually famous. There's some couple crew members I recognize, and some stand-ins. My friend was asked to do it and declined.
Yeah,
it seems like a good move.
Yeah, don't blame him at all. Don't blame him at all. All right, next up on our agenda today, like I said, the big story is Disney's response, and we are going to have more on that later. The proxies come out. We know how much Bob Chapek got paid now for his short tenure and all kinds of fun stuff. So Ben will be back later to talk more about that. But in the meantime, we're going to continue on with all the really interesting stuff this morning. Kyle, any updates on Magic Key?
Let me see where I'm at. I think it's last I checked, it was the same thing. Yeah, last update was at 9:16. I'm still more than an hour, even though I'm a quarter of the way on my little status bar.
So it's going to be interesting to see will all 3 keys that are currently available stay available throughout the day. And then as a new thing, you cannot stay in the queue overnight. The queue shuts down at 10 p.m., you said?
Yeah, new pass sales will be paused each night at 10 p.m. So I don't know if they'll flush the queue or but then they won't resume until any earlier than 9 a.m. Pacific the following day. So if you are stuck if they don't flush the queue and you're in it, don't bother staying up past 10 p.m. Just get there before 9 a.m. the next day.
The next thing I want to do, Flower Festival of the Arts has begun at EPCOT, and we covered that a lot on Friday, but we did not cover the new Journey into Imagination Beacons of Magic.
Imagination. I always have to say it that way.
It's gotten some rave reviews around the internet. I wanted to wait and have a live viewing on this show, so I have not seen it yet. Have you seen it yet, Kyle?
I have not, and I'm going to miss the first few seconds of it.
Here we go.
Mix red and gold from autumn flowers, purple and blue. From twilight hours, green summer hills, and rainbows play a part. A painter's brush, a work of art. Happy dances, costumes and romances, with flashing tears and good nights on the road. A brand new show. Some happy songs, some happy dances, costumes and costumes will never end. I bet I can use imagination to discover all kinds of new things. Of course. It's your key to unlock wonders. We all have sparks, imagination. That's how our minds create, and all they can think. Our wildest dreams come true. Those little sparks in me and you.
What'd you think, Kyle?
It's cute. It's pretty. I still have. I don't think I've seen one of those live yet, but they always look fun.
That is the best part of the 50th. Epcot's in particular is quite spectacular. That's a good question. Do you ever wonder how the original attraction will be received now if they put it back? I have my suspicions.
I think we could all probably figure that out. It'll be popular for a few months, and then people will be like, like the Tiki Room, where people are, if you were to take someone who's not like a major Disney fan and they go to Tiki Room, they're like, oh, why did we do that?
Oh yeah, with the Magic Band, Rebecca's looking forward to seeing that with the Magic Band. So, Festival of the Arts is underway at Epcot. Definitely want to check that out. I don't know if they have the best food, but they have the prettiest food. So
I just ordered my first Magic Band Plus, although I have no Disney trips planned, because Shop Disney had a sale, and so I managed to get one for like $20, and it's
nice.
55 or something. So
which one did you get?
It's a Star Wars holiday one, so it's got like the cartoony Ewoks on the band and stuff.
Oh, maybe that's why it was for sale. It's holiday. Jeremiah is on the Disney Fantasy right now, which makes me hate him. And he is enjoying the Pixar Day at Sea cruise. I guess the Day at Sea itself is over, but the cruise continues. So they debuted a new character, right? Rex is brand new. We've not seen him as a walk around before.
Not to our knowledge.
So let's check that out. Rex as a walk around. This is a part of the Pixar POW celebration, which is
I assume he wasn't in Toy Story the musical. I never saw it.
Yeah, he must have been in Toy Story the musical. That's a good question.
But probably not this costume, this type of costume, because obviously the characters in that looked a lot different.
Yeah. So let's take a look at Rex here. Hope you guys can see that pretty well.
He's a Partysaurus Rex, by the way. I don't know.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
He's a Partysaurus Rex.
He's a Partysaurus Rex. Those aren't. First of all, I'm surprised
He's got big hands and short little arms. I'm just not sure how well this was thought through.
That is an interesting character. It is cute to see that, though. And anytime there's a new character.
I think he looks better than the other new face characters that they introduced.
So I know we talked about that last time. I wasn't going to go through that again. But since you mentioned now, some of them
apparently they were the best interaction ever, according
Some
to
of them look good. This is one. Mrs. Incredible and Edna was one of the best interactions I've ever had. Mrs. Incredible looks spectacular to me. Edna looks different, but I like the way they did that. I don't know, just the way they did it, having to deal with a character with an unusual look. I like it. I think it turned out well. What do you think?
It's weird. I mean, yeah, I guess I agree with you on that front. Like that, if you are adapting a weird looking character, then they should look weird. But it's like you didn't have to.
So this is what's weird here. What's new is face characters for these guys. That is not something that has been the case in the past. However, Miguel is not a face character, right? That's not a face character.
That is not. No.
I just saw Megan, so my idea of what face looks like is just a little.
And it's fun because like every time there's a Pixar face character, we're like, is this the first one? And Merida, at the very least, I know that there's been others since. But
and then another cool event they had was okay, well, this isn't it, but here's Jack. Jack, also not a face character, but very cute. There's Mr. Incredible, the one that's gotten the most.
Now the Frozone face character, I can get on board with.
Frozone looks good. Mr. Incredible just looks a little odd. And which character is this right here? Do you know?
I'm sure it's probably something to do with the whatever show that they were doing.
It's like the cruise director.
Maybe she's a real thing, but or like, you know, maybe she's IP, but maybe she's just something they made up for the plot of the show.
So, and they also had, they had the Pixar Pal celebration at Pixar Day at Sea. They had totally awesome pool party. We had videos.
Watch babies racing on our YouTube as well.
So that's the one I'm showing now. That Jack's Diaper Dash is always a fun thing. Let's mute this and share this tab. So it's a fun thing. What they do is they get babies, literal babies, face babies, and they race them. They race them in the atrium, and they call it Jack's Diaper Dash. They've been calling that for a while, and it makes so much sense at Pixar Day at Sea, where I would hope they plussed it up with some actual Jack. So I'm going to fast forward here, and it's just, we never did this with Gideon, which saddens me a little bit, because I think he has some speed. But you see, so this is the strategy. Do you have them race to the mom or the dad? And here they're all racing to the mom. I assume it's the mom. You know, that's pretty presumptuous of me, but. And
that's
literally,
what I would do with Rigby too.
They should implement this with dogs.
Except I don't think you can have dogs on a cruise, right?
Mac will only refer to them as face babies from now on. And then you try to wave him over. Oh, look at him. He's trying to lead the way. One of these babies has a mission. One of these babies is perfectly comfortable where they're at. And like people are lined all over deck 4 and deck 5 looking down on this. And it's just a fun thing. Even more fun for Pixar Day at Sea. And the secret is don't feed your baby for a few hours before. And then that makes them even. Laughing Place does not condone the malnourishment.
So now those other two babies become glue, right? That's how that works?
Babies, I mean. This is really a fun thing. I've watched this a couple of times. It is truly a fun thing to watch. Much more fun than it seemed like it would be when you describe it. So,
are there multiple rounds, I assume?
Yeah, because there's more than 4 babies on the ship, and it's a requirement if you go on the
Not off. That's how you know you're on a Disney cruise, when there's more than 4 babies.
If you are on the cruise with a baby, it is a requirement that they participate. No, it is not a requirement, but it is a lot of fun. I'm kind of sad that we never did it.
What's the price?
So Jeremiah is still on the ship. This is where he watched the football game yesterday, if you were a football fan. And the trailer, if you were. I don't know why he didn't watch the trailer here, but he should have. So.
Oh, really? He's looking at the skyline and the score. We don't know if he actually watched the game.
I can't imagine he watched. He's not a sports guy, I don't think. Do they allow sports betting on a Disney cruise? They do not allow sports betting. They do not allow betting.
I mean, if you buy the Wi-Fi package and can hit the season
I think figure out a way to do betting on the races, not with money, but some kind of way to do betting on the races would be a ton of fun. I agree. So maybe we're going to be on a cruise soon. Maybe we'll suggest that to our cruise director, see if we can.
I mean, you're in open water.
Yeah, there are no laws in open water. Isn't that how that works? Everything's legal in New Jersey and open waters?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. So cool. I see Fanboy is back in the green room. Do you have new info? Are you ready to come back with us? I think that's a yes. All right, let's bring back Mr. Fanboy. How you doing, boy?
Hi, how are you? So I went to the full proxy statement, and as a reminder, the full proxy statement is where you're going to get the full details of the timeline. They don't have that just in their little PowerPoint. So I highly recommend you read the full proxy. And obviously the full proxy is a lot about why you shouldn't vote for Nelson Peltz. But one thing that I thought was interesting is they have this like section about like business highlights, right? Just like a quick sort of snapshot. And it's divided in half between Disney Media and Entertainment Distribution, DMED, and DPEP, Disney Parks Experience and Products. And obviously it's a business document, so it talks about the revenue and income. On the DMED side, they talk about the subscriber growth, that they won 26 Primetime Emmys and 6 Academy Awards, and ESPN is the #1 sports net minutes consumed amongst all key demographics. It's not exactly rocket science there. On the DPEP side, this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's the launch of The Wish, Genie Plus and Lightning Lane, and Avengers Campus at Disneyland Paris. So I can see why the case is made that maybe they're under investing in the parks. Now, granted, this is basically fiscal 2022, so October 2021 through September 2022. But hopefully next year, or beyond that, we will have a little bit more excitement than Lightning Lane being our #1 pointed out business achievement.
It's a slow year, because all the money went to. Anyway, what else? I know there was some stuff about compensation there. I can't wait to get to hear how much JPEG got paid.
Yeah, so a couple other things. What has the board done? Well, they're doing this huge overview of how they do their lobbying and political strategy. So, the whole mess going on in Florida that kind of stemmed from this. So they're reevaluating that whole idea about how much they want to bring on, how they want to tackle lobbying going forward.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That is potentially very interesting.
Yeah. They're going to be disclosing pay equity and diversity numbers at the end of 2024. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Also, what that means, and how they manage their business moving forward to try and get those numbers where they want them to be.
Is my memory correct? That's something that gets brought up every meeting by a questioner or something, that they should be doing that.
Yeah, and that's why it's on here. I'm sure there's a shareholder. I haven't gotten to the shareholder proposals, but I'm sure there's
okay.
And then they talk about what they want from a board, and what do you look for in a board member? So they talk about technology, which they obviously need help with, diversity, cybersecurity, risk management, finance and accounting, and things like that. So I don't know, obviously Nelson Peltz has some of that, but I guess the question is what does he bring to the table? They talked about succession and how they always talk at least once a year about succession, and they identify potential candidates and how the candidates who are internal should be exposed to the board so that the board can evaluate their performance. But they do talk about how the management changes that they were consulted with includes the termination of Jeff Morrow, who lasted a good couple Scaramucci's.
Is that a unit of time now?
Horatio Gutierrez being named as the company's chief lawyer, Christina Shanky as a head of communications, and then obviously talking about bringing Bob Iger back. But they have to be careful because Bob Chapek was not fired for cause. So they also kind of say, well, and Bob Chapek, who led the company through unprecedented times. and it goes on so much from that. And then when you get to executive compensation, which is always what people look at, by they look at things. So, for example, Bob Iger's base compensation is $3 million at the end of 2022 fiscal, but his target in terms of base pay is $12 million. Christy McCarthy, her target's $4 million, so on and so forth. And they get that's what they get for salary, and then there's obviously equity awards as well that make them very rich. So for example, Bob Iger, the Christy McCarthy was given performance-based awards, equity awards that valued $12 million. So the $2 million in salary is almost irrelevant.
Right.
For Bob Chapek, they gave him 90%. I'm sorry. They gave him 90% of his targeted bonus for whatever reason. But so his salary was $2.5 million. He got $10 million in stocks, $3.7 million in options, and so on and so forth, for a total compensation of $24 million.
And that's for the whole fiscal year, right?
Yeah, the whole fiscal year. That's correct, for the whole fiscal year.
Not just his time as CEO.
Well, he was
CEO that whole year.
He was CEO the whole time. Now, Christy McCarthy, I think it's interesting to note, her compensation was $20 million. So there's not as big of a difference between the CFO and the CEO, at least under Bob Chapek, than you would expect. Jeff Merrill, by the way, his compensation, $8 million.
What's his position?
General counsel.
No, he was the public affairs, corporate affairs officer. He was on. He worked there from January 24th through June 30th.
So he's the one that didn't work out. He was only lasted half a Scaramucci, and
got $8 million.
Is that like just rolling his whole contract into one lump payment or something, or is that what he was expected to get for a year? You know,
I don't know what he was expected to get, but it seems high considering most of the compensation. His salary was only $500,000, but he got a $2.7 million bonus.
Well, he also did marketing. He promoted the date of when Guardians of the Galaxy was going to open.
Oh, yes.
So anyway, I think it's interesting how much they paid failed people. Not exactly a good look, but it's complicated, right? Like, you don't want to get in a legal battle. I mean, you obviously have to pay these people to get them. I mean, that's understandable. Right. I think one thing we have learned is the value of good leadership, because when you don't have it, but then at the same time, you don't want to have a legal battle with them for not paying out their full contract, or what's the definition of act for cause or any of that stuff. So,
and we're used to that. We see it in sports.
These golden parachutes are criticized, understandably. I understand, but at what point is it better is it a good investment to pay them to disappear than it would be to have a long, sort of drawn out legal battle? And I don't have the answer as to how to make that. What's that?
It said ask Jeff Katzenberg.
Right. And
we're used to that. I mean, in sports, every failed coach, no coach is fired at the end of his contract. They are all fired and they get paid for years to come. That's just the way business and sports work.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you can become CEO of the Walt Disney Company, I would recommend it if you're purely looking at economics. They might consider you. There's the succession planning happening, and
they'll consider you.
I'm going to take my 12 shares and I'm going to call up Mark and see if I can get a meeting. And then I'll be like, not only do I want to be on the board, I want to be considered by your succession committee. And I think I could do a great job for 3 days.
So earlier, we led off the show with Ben talking about the response and the timeline regarding Nelson Peltz and Disney's response that came out today. Have you learned anything else in your time off? Have the financial peeps been talking about it at all, or anything at all?
I don't have. No, I honestly I don't know.
Thank you.
As I said, well, I think they're sort of distracted by other things that are happening this week on the on the macroeconomic front. I'm just going to look real quick if I could, even if you go to, now I will say stocks up a point. I don't know. I don't have the S&P in front of me, but yeah, if you go to CNBC actually, and you look up Disney, they don't have any stories. They don't even talk about that. So, Davos is a huge deal, in Europe. And I think, there was even some pushback into how much these financial, proxy fights happen all the time. Disney gets outsourced coverage because, outscaled coverage because it being Disney and people having, loving Disney. But
like the Cowboys.
Right. So, yeah, it's exactly. They're the Cowboys, except, we know how that game turned out. So we'll see how this one plays out.
They definitely missed all the extra points. And
but anyway, I'm gonna go fly back to California.
Okay.
Good.
See you in a couple
as I
hours.
said, if you have any questions for Josh tomorrow, email us at editor@laughingplace.co. No, editor@laughingplace.com.
Thanks so much, Ben, for everything today. Ben,
I just want everyone to know that was a very special moment because for the first time ever, Benji just told me where he was going.
So earlier today, if you missed it, beginning of our show, Ben talked about, as I said, Nelson Peltz and the response of Disney to all of that. And he also talked about meeting with Josh tomorrow this morning with some of the other fan sites and some of the interesting stuff that came out of that. So highly recommend you rewind when we're done here and check that out.
And believe it or not, we are still not even halfway through our document.
We have so much to talk about today that I am going to push some of it off onto tomorrow, hoping that tomorrow isn't quite so busy and because real life is intruding over here. But there are a couple of things I did want to mention before we finish today. One of which was the Play Pavilion at Epcot. We have heard an official word on that. Kyle, you want to share that official word?
Yeah, so the official word, which is definitely not a statement, is that they are reevaluating the concept of the Play Pavilion. This topic came up because people noticed that on the new Epcot International Festival of the Arts maps that are being distributed at the parks, the Play Pavilion had been like a little note there like, oh, future location of this, and that was removed. So Disney says they're reevaluating, and they'll have updates not about the Play Pavilion, but about the future home of the former Wonders of Life Pavilion in the future. So lots of speculation there. I mean, presumably the Play Pavilion itself could move forward once they kind of rethink what that is, but it sounds like they're something's going to be happening with that space, but it might not be the Play Pavilion as it was originally announced.
Right. And we don't have a lot of detail even on what it was going to be. It was going to have interactive exhibits and attractions and you can see from the concept art. But
yeah, there was lots of concept art peeping and some like potential, I think there might have even been some specific examples of games and stuff, but I don't know if those were ever like official or just kind of like blue sky examples. So yeah, it's been kind of nebulous for a while. They've said that it was still coming, but they haven't really mentioned anything about it. I think the most obvious example being at D23 where it didn't come up.
Right.
So everyone has been making pause and play puns for a while, but now we have a little bit more detail and that's probably going to go a different direction. But maybe that's one of those things that tomorrow says is ready to be announced that they're just sitting on announcing.
Oh, and hey, look what I just found on Twitter. This is again a Scott Gustin tweet. I think this is actually from, let me check out TikTok. Real quick, sorry. Loving me some TikTok. Yep, there it is. Yeah. You know what TikTok does not like? Pause. Okay. Fine. Share this tab. Add to stream. This is regarding Toontown. This TikTok 13 minutes ago. Disney Parks hat tip to Scott Gustin's Twitter.
It's happening. They're putting up the sign. They're putting up the sign. It's happening. They're putting up the sign. They're putting up the sign.
So in
Why are they
there,
that excited? It's happening.
Scott was kind enough to do a side-by-side, taking a screenshot there, and you can see the new Toontown sign, even more whimsical than before. That's pretty cool. So yeah, that is breaking news. And let me get that to our peeps real quick. I don't think they frequent TikTok as much as I do. Nope, Lee already had it in there. Sorry, guys. I didn't scroll to the bottom before posting. Sorry about that.
So now it's in there 3 times. So just super helpful.
All right. And the only other thing I wanted to do today is this day in Disney history, because you really can't push that off until tomorrow. So 1913, Claude Coates was born. Unfortunately, I think it was just last week that we did the anniversary of his death. So we mentioned that we have a LP book club video where we talk about his book, Claude Coates, Walt Disney Imagineer, his book, the biography on him. So you can go check that out. Yes, Mac, you should write it up 3 times if you got nothing else to do. But pick on a guy who was trying to do 5 things at once, Mike. That's fine. I understand. Disney legend Betty White would celebrate her birthday today. She was born on this day in 1922, and Disney legend in 2009. So Golden Girls definitely comes under the Disney umbrella. Betty White is a Disney legend and would have turned 101 today. And this video is The Best of Rose. You can find that on YouTube by OSH Sienna. If you want to go check that out and celebrate Betty today with old St. Olaf stories.
Turn on the Hallmark, because I'm sure they're showing Golden Girls right now.
So this one, I hope Tony's watching right now. Eartha Kitt, the voice of Yzma, born in 1927.
Funny thing about Eartha Kitt, that was nothing. That was just for Mac.
I do want to show this video. This is from the Sweatbox, which is a somewhat well-known documentary about the tumultuous creation of the Emperor's New Groove and what was originally Kingdom of the Sun. And this is a cool video of her doing some of the recording of Yzma and Emperor's New Groove. So we're going to watch this one.
Come true for me, because I've always wanted to do one. And to work with a great voice like Eartha Kitt's voice is also fantastic.
Oh, to destroy our beloved traditions. This act of highest treason has but one punishment: death. Guards! Take him away!
That's pretty cool. I really need to see that. Have you seen Sweatbox?
Yes. I bet you if you ask nicely, Tony Betty might be able to hook you up.
He has hooked me up in the past, and I've never taken the time. And
Oh, documentary bros. What happened? Gotta keep
I'm
up.
guilty. All right. Sweatbox is next on my list. Oh, Andreas Deja was the original supervising animator, but later the reins went to Dale Bayer. Is there a place, Tony, maybe people can read more about the making of this movie? I don't know, maybe on one of our favorite websites, I wonder. Next up, James Earl Jones, 1931. This is a big birthday today. I don't know what was happening around April 17th, but there are a lot of birthdays today. And this is another one I think it's worth listening to. This is James Earl Jones. This is from the American Film Institute. Very short, talking about doing Mufasa's voice.
My first mistake was to try to make him regal, you know. And what they really needed was something more like me. They said, "What do you like as a father?" I said, "Well, I'm really a dopey dad, you know." And so they began to impose my facial expressions onto Mufasa and a different tone of voice. Yeah, he was authoritative, but he was just a gentle man.
I love that. Because you can.
Darth Vader was also a goofy dad. I don't know if you've seen him dance.
Who?
Darth Vader.
Yes, I have seen him dance at Hyperspace Hoopla. Let's see. Today in 1977, one that means something to my wife, the first of the new Mickey Mouse clubs debuted. And that was the 70s version, of course, starring the one and only Lisa Welchel. My memory of this, I was not a big Mickey Mouse Club fan when I was a child, but for some reason, I always remember this, probably because they were at Disneyland and the introduction for Showtime. Very 70s. SMMC, that's right.
Welcome, one and all. Get yourself ready to have a ball. We're gonna dance, we're gonna sing, we're getting ready to do our thing. It's showtime. Get up and go time. It's showtime. No get no time. It's showtime. With our pals at
That was a little bit country and a little bit rock and roll.
I don't even remember. There's stuff after that apparently where they're still in the park, but my after school memory is simply them being on that monorail for some reason.
I have seen a picture of you where you look like you could have been in that cast.
That's where I got my style from. That's where I got my style from. Absolutely. In 2003, Aladdin, a musical spectacular, officially debuted at Hyperion. It'd been doing previews since December, but this was the big day, the big debut. I was there. We were there at that media event.
Nice. I very much enjoyed that show. Saw it several times.
That was a great show. And it's such a repeatable show. What was so great about it is it's so repeatable.
Yeah, you'd always, not always, but you'd get different jokes. You'd get different combinations of jokes.
Right.
And there's a lot of elements that if I was taking someone for the first time, I'd make them go. And then you have to, the hardest part is deciding, well, do I want to go for orchestra so I can have the elephant walk by, or do I want to go for the mezzanine so you can see the carpet better?
These are the problems of life. Yeah. This is why you need to go more than once. Roy E. Disney on this day in 2004 spoke at NFFC convention about the Save Disney campaign. I was there too. That was a lot of places. 2012, the Katsura Grill opened in Epcot. 2014, a Disney Channel original movie. I'm not familiar with this one, nor most of them, but nothing I like more than showing DCOM trailers. So we're going to do it today.
All right.
In the competitive world of snowboarding,
another victory.
Kayla Morgan was on top. Will Cloud was at the bottom.
That is sad. And the guy was a legend in the making. Now he just drags towards
the top all day.
No, but I would have said the world of competitive snowboarding instead of the competitive world of snowboarding.
I'll fix the sign. But you're going to have to pay for Will's sled yourself.
You're going to work at the dog kennel every day after school.
What?
Huh?
Sled can't possibly cost
and
them.
You're late.
Not as late as that flannel shirt. Hello, are we in Seattle?
I feel like this is like a Hallmark movie before Hallmark movies.
It definitely seems like it.
And second of all,
Yeah.
I am the best.
There's snow.
Not
They have a
CGI.
snowball. If they have a snowball fight at some point.
Then how did I make the team?
Your daddy owns the resort.
I think they're going to fall in love.
Just calm down.
Exactly, Tony. Exactly.
Then everyone knows.
She's facing the truth.
Train me to compete.
He's facing his fear.
Here comes the Cloud9.
We should write a Hallmark movie like as a spec script.
That's cool. We don't have to write it. We can just type it into chat bot and it'll write it for us.
It does. After about 50
Is
more
it-
times.
They'll risk it all to get back on top.
Cloud9 could be a second chance. for
Don't
both
you have
of
3
us.
articles to write?
Too dangerous.
For me or for you?
Both of us do not understand how snowboarding works.
Starring Dove Cameron and Luke Benward.
It takes.
Oh, look at Luke. I went to school with one of the stars of this movie.
Which one?
Luke is our resident Cloud9 fan, apparently.
The Disney Channel original movie coming to Disney.
Oh, it's coming. The Disney Channel original movie coming to Disney Channel.
And it did come to Disney Channel on January 17th.
Is it on Disney Plus, Doobie?
2014. That is a great question. I don't have an answer for you. I should know that because I know people want to see it now. This needs to be a new LP show. What, Cloud9? Or Disney Channel Hallmark? I'm not sure.
we're going to do a quiz where you're going to read off the plot, and we have to guess Hallmark or DCOM.
That is a good idea. Yeah, will there be an announcement of a new snowboarding ride at DK?
That's a DTL quiz in the making.
I am so glad I included Cloud 9 today because that was the one that hit.
Cloud 9 is indeed on Disney Channel on Disney Plus. It's 1 hour and 29 minutes, just as you'd expect. High atop snow-capped mountains in the world of competitive snowboarding. Like I said, they made the edit. Two unlikely friends, Kayla Morgan, a prima donna snowboarder who has just dropped her from her competition team, and Will Cloud, a former snowboarding champion who is struggling after a career-ending wipeout, must overcome self-doubt if they want to move mountains and win the upcoming Fire and Ice snowboarding competition.
So I noticed his name was Will Cloud. That is a great description. This is a movie about snowboarding. Presumably they wanted to name it Cloud 9, and so they called him Will Cloud. But why?
Their judgment was clouded.
Thank you, Kyle. And Max says, us reacting to DCOM trailers should be a show. Will Cloud. I don't disagree with you there, Mac. Finally, on this day in 2020, Disneyland Rise of the Resistance opened at Disneyland, strangely enough. That's why I said Disneyland's Rise of the Resistance. We did a live stream from that at the time.
10 people got to ride it that day, I think.
We've got a replay of this live stream running on LPTV today. Not the highest quality back then. Our live stream quality has improved, thankfully, but we did have it. Mike streamed from there for about 20 minutes as it opened. Kind of fun. Kind of a little time capsule from history. So you can go check that out.
I have not been on Disneyland's yet. I've only been on Walt Disney World's.
Oh, it's so different.
I know, I'm sure.
I don't think, someone please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think once you're actually, I assume once you get into Ray's place, but certainly once you get on the ride, there is zero difference. If I'm wrong,
I haven't heard of any differences. It's not a pirate situation.
Hallmark or DCOM, coupled with you guys reacting to DCOM's trailers. All right, we're going to make this happen one way or the other. We are doing a show, us reacting to trailers and us guessing if can we react to Hallmark trailers too? Not just DCOM trailers, so we get it all together. Does Disney own any part of Hallmark that makes this, work for us?
And then we're going to have a third-party vote for Lifetime movie.
Dude, we've been watching some of those lately.
Or what's the new one? Gaff?
Gaff, I like Gaff. Or GAC. Isn't it GAC, Great American Channel? Anyway, the Lifetime movies, man, they won't depress you to no end. Nothing good happens in this world according to Lifetime. We've been having fun today, Kyle.
Yeah.
All right, that's it. We watch a trailer and react and have to guess Hallmark or DCOM before they reveal it. Unfortunately, the trailer...
Well, the voiceover would probably tell you. I guess you could watch without this. And the stars. So Dove Cameron.
Dove Cameron and Raven Simone in a Hallmark movie. All right, we're going to figure it out, Mac. Don't worry. Once you finish your 3 articles, you can start working on that. Thanks for joining us today, guys. It's been a busy morning. As Kyle said, we got through like half of what we wanted to get through today, but unfortunately,
I have 12 minutes left in my queue for Magic Key.
Yeah, that's so many big stories. Magic Key is back for sale right now. They announced that Little Mermaid would be reopening later this month. The Little Mermaid meet and greet at the Magic Kingdom, and that Enchanted Tales with Belle would be reopening next month at the Magic Kingdom. Disney has responded to Nelson Peltz's attempt to get on the Disney board, and the response is a pretty heavy response. It's an interesting read, both the response itself and Disney's detailed timeline of everything that's transpired over the past few months with Mr. Peltz. Really enlightening, and I'm really hoping that he responds to the response and this keeps going because it's such an interesting story.
And we should also mention no date for the shareholder meeting yet. We know it now. It seems like it will be virtual. They're not going to have it in a place, but still no date on that. They're a little distracted with this.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure they're quite distracted. Pixar Day at Sea is going on. We talked about that. And Play Pavilion and This Day in History and so much going on. And I didn't even get to my fun stuff that I save in my pocket while I'm TikToking and Instagramming. We're going to get to that tomorrow. So guys, thanks for joining us on the supersized episode of the LPTV Disney Morning Show. If any news breaks today, we're going to be back live. Otherwise, we've got Barely Necessities coming up at 4 p.m. Pacific time, the Disney Merchandise Show with the 2 Rebeccas. believe that is our highest rated show here on LPTV. Later on, we have Disney Trivia Live at 7:30 p.m. starring myself and my son Gideon, with Rebecca off camera, but the lovely voice often being heard. So fun day here. Stay tuned, like, subscribe, ring the bell. Thanks, Kyle, for joining me today. Thanks to the Big Cheese for all his time. Hope he has a safe trip back, and we will see y'all in the future.